Students, so this week I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the symposium to try to give you a sort of space for your reading. And one of the reasons I assigned this text is because I think it's very difficult to understand the Republic without understanding this. But I also assigned it just simply because it's a standard of ancient philosophy, which actually has had some influence in other disciplines, particularly literature. Um, and I think that it gives you an initiation into the way that Plato operates. So when you're reading a Platonic dialogue, and if you've had experience with Plato or you've taken a class with me before, you probably know this. He's quite serious about it being a dialogue. He wants it to be a back and forth. And not just the back and forth with his characters, which actually sometimes doesn't happen. You'll see it's like, yes, Socrates, no Socrates, when Socrates asks him a question. But it's supposed to be a transformation in your mind. You know, the way that when you're watching a movie or a play, you start off with some basic assumptions. You learn in the opening parts of the movie who the characters are, what the setting is. Some stuff is still missing. You fill in the gap as time goes on, and you might even have to change earlier premises you had picked up or come into the movie with. And so that's what's happening here, is the idea that through reading this, you are growing, you are changing, you are stretching through this sort of internal back and forth um, to be able to come to a conclusion. And the idea that Plato has is that the way that we learn, and this is represented in the structure of the symposium itself, and he just says it explicitly, is through ascent, meaning that you start with the partial and you move up toward the complete. The idea of dialectic in Plato is a type of starting with the partial and moving towards the complete. It is important to emphasize that philosophical inquiry for Plato is not going to necessarily ever be complete, because there's a sense in which the whole is beyond us. But that there's a structure or a teleology to inquiry itself is one of the things I think you learn from the symposium. You can apply this to this symposium, you can apply it to the Republic. But the idea is that his method works this way. I want you to know that for when you're reading. But I also want you to know that his method is making a normative claim, which is that this is what the human mind is like. And this is what the nature of knowledge entails. So, what is a symposium? A symposium is basically like a drinking party, but a drinking party with speeches. And it's, of course, something attended by people with noble birth. This would have been a very fitting setting for a play, any Greek play, right? And so Plato is very consciously choosing to imitate the form of playwriting in how he's going to unfold his philosophical argument. Now, every Platonic dialogue has a main question, and the main question here is, what is eros? And I just want to talk a little bit about eros because I think that it might be foreign to us. the way that he's using it. Eros is basically a desire for beauty. So sexual eros is a big part of that. And you see that in the dialogue itself. And that's the way that the word probably resonates with us the most. But there's a more of a meaning here, which is that eros is a love for beauty, a drive for beauty. That means it's almost like a love of the divine. And in ancient culture, ancient Greek culture, eros was often seen as being pitted against reason. Eros could send you into a frenzy. You would just want to consume the object of your desire because you are so taken over by wanting to like just bring this beauty into yourself. There is a lot of evidence, and a lot of scholars think that one of the primary drives for eros in the Greek self-understanding is actually death. So that because we die, because we will die, there's sort of this need to unite yourself, this drive to unite yourself with beauty, which somehow represents a transcendent thing that you can possess. But one of the things you immediately start to see in the symposium itself, and I think that you see if you reflect on eros generally, is that it's fleeting in its most intense forms. Beauty, physical beauty, which is kind of the most obvious form of what we erotically desire, is fleeting as well. And so we throw ourselves at this thing like our lives depend on it for the Greeks, but the nature of our ability to possess it is very limited. Now, I said it's opposed to reason. You heard, right, fits of desire, fits of madness. Eros is actually depicted as being close to madness sometimes. Like you just lose any ability to tell yourself, stop, don't do that. Or no, that's a bad idea. And so reason is often seen as what curbs eros, or what teaches us to not indulge in it. Though I think it's better to say for the Greeks that eros is sometimes depicted as a divine madness. So it's kind of like your reason is gone because the gods told you your reason is gone. They just decided your reason is gone. And what is going to happen in the symposium ultimately, in Socrates' speech at the end, is that you're going to see the uniting of reason and eros. And I'll get to that in a little bit, but I wanted to put that out there. So each part of this dialogue is a different person giving a speech. And it's sort of their turn to take the floor about what they think eros is. And this would not be unusual for a symposium. The way that this is structured, and this will be true of the Republic too, you need to pay careful attention to who the speaker is, what the speaker prioritizes, and whatever dramatic setting information you see. Every speech is going to build on the speech before it, or the speeches before it. And Plato is very deliberately constructing an ascent from the sort of less apt, sort of first impression, maybe accounts of Eros, toward the lasting conjunction between the erotic and the rational that you get in Socrates' speech. Now, what you're supposed to learn through that is that Eros isn't bad. And Eros doesn't have to be opposed to reason, but Eros has to be refined, meaning that the objects of your desire have to become higher and higher and higher. What counts for higher? For the Greeks, what counts for higher is always what is the most lasting, the most permanent. So if you think about the way they think about being, sort of the completeness of what is, anything that comes to be and passes away is lacking in the perfection of the wholeness of being. And so when you love something that is incomplete, you're restless. In the end, should you consume it, should it become a part of your life, it won't satisfy that erotic drive. And what you'll learn as you're reading the different speeches is that this is true. For a lot of people, they dispose whatever the object of Eros is when they're done, or when they find something else that delights them. I want to focus on Aristophanic love before I move on to Socrates' speech. One of the speakers is Aristophanes, and he occurs toward the end, which tells you that his type of explanation of Eros is higher than the lower ones that come before. Aristophanic love is probably how we think about love presently. In his account, he tells a myth, basically, of humans that were once united in together physically. So one human and another human united together physically. That was the complete whole. And then a tragic event happens, and they become separated from each other. And so erotic longing on this account, this Aristophanic account, is finding that other piece. You're not complete because you were made as a part of somebody else. And so you are driven by this desire to find that other piece and to reunite yourself, to reconstitute yourself. This has obviously a physical meaning, right? Because sex is a union of two, right? And there's some jokes about that. There are always jokes like this in Plato, but especially in the Symposium. But it's more than that. It's this idea that the soul is not complete until it finds its partner in erotic love. Now, the next step that you see is that, of course, if Eros is going to be connected up to truth and hence reason, and so we're talking about this ascent, this ladder of purification of Eros, then another person can't be the stopping point. Finding another person and expecting them to become your whole world, to complete every longing that you have, is just not rational. And it's not that it's not rational in the sense that it's like it could happen, but it's a bad way to spend your life. It doesn't happen. There is nobody who completes another person in this way. For a number of reasons. And that doesn't mean that there aren't really significant partnerships, romantic or friendships or whatever. But that if we're talking about this erotic drive that is connected to the transcendent, no other person is going to be able to hold the transcendent. And so that part of yourself that's looking for that is going to run into a wall. And not just run into a wall, but you could also suffer under an extended delusion, which is that this person should give all of this to you. And the fact that they don't means that there's something wrong with you or wrong with them, or maybe if you just keep trying, you will receive the sort of peace and truth that you're looking for. Or you'll miss, that this is on his account. So what you see happen with Socrates is really interesting because in Socrates' speech, the person who reveals sort of the truth about Eros is a woman. And this is one of the only times that we see Socrates being taught by somebody else. So it's really significant because the person who he says sort of unlocks the secrets of all philosophy to him is a woman. And that's something that scholars have talked about. I just want you to pay attention to it because this will come up again in the Republic in a different way. And what she lays out is sort of this account where you understand that the longing, the erotic drive, is natural. And that it has a point, which is to be able to help you elevate to the highest delights, which is the contemplation of the good. And that this is she actually compares it to childbirth. It's midwifery. It's bringing the baby forward, the new creation. That this is important, right? Because what's kind of the outcome of Eros a lot of times? So it's a child, right? So you're bringing this new creation forth. There's this struggle to be able to do this. And then there's this new disclosure of being, basically. And so what Diotima teaches him is that philosophy is an erotic art. And not only is philosophy an erotic art, it is the highest form of Eros. So there isn't this opposition to reason and Eros. What it turns out is that the way that our erotic drive is most fulfilled is in the contemplation of what is beautiful. And we see parts of that in things and people and activities and pleasures. But the fullest sense of this is the contemplation of the one. And in the end of the speech, you have sort of this chaos reintroduced in the figure of Alcibiades, who is a famous real life person. Plato's characters are often real life people. And he was a great general, but he is a great contrast here because he's someone who's definitely very erotic. He's beautiful. He has a lot of lovers. He's desired by a lot of people to be their lover. But he's not just this erotic desire for sex. What you see is his eros comes out in his desire for mastery, in his desire for expansion, in his desire for war. It's like this lust, this vitality. And in the end, he kind of raises the question of whether or not a a person who's very erotic and very capable, in addition to being very erotic, will learn the lessons that Socrates learns through diatima. What happens when you have somebody who is so driven by this that they destabilize the political order and reject sort of the alternative offered by Socrates. This is something that occurs again in the Republic, where you encounter this question of what to do to transform people's tastes so that they love justice and commit themselves to it. And what you see is that the particular danger is the person who is really gifted and who has a taste for injustice. That is the tyrant. Okay. All right. I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have more questions. I think this is a really great read. Before I go, I should actually talk about pederasty, which is something that happens in this book. I mean, you're graduate students, so it's not like you're dealing with undergrads. The practice at the time was this, and it was always an older, more established man with a boy. One of the reasons I think that it figures so prominently isn't just because it's cultural, but one of the philosophical points that's being made is in this milieu, the idea is that the beloved, right, is the boy. They're also the passive partner. And so if you have erotic desire, you are the pursuer of this beauty, this fleeting beauty, because that partnership only occurs within that certain period of time. And you are the one who struggles to consume it. Now, of course, now we wouldn't talk about any of this way. This is abusive. But I think that's actually part of the point for Socrates, is that eros, when we aim it at the wrong things, destroys us. It destroys us and it destroys the objects of our desire. And that's why Alcibiades comes in destroying things. It's kind of a drawing your attention back to that. Okay, thank you so much. Bye.